All right, so today I'm gonna go over some of the history of Path of Exile 2. A lot of the aspects of the game were incomplete at the time of launch. Obviously, it was early access, so it wasn't a finished product. This is important to keep in mind when we're going over some of the details that this video will have to offer, as the premise of early access is to essentially provide an opportunity to enjoy the game's experience while also being in a testing environment. And I think that that's important to understand in the lead up to 1.0, which was just now, it's kind of recently in 2026. When Path of Exile 2 launched, we had a $30 price tag, and the game launched with pretty much 50% of the interactable content, the items, and the playable characters. PoE 2 would be developing alongside PoE 1. So PoE 1's content, seasons, updates would be happening at the same time. And in addition to that, the MTX, which is the monetization model of the franchise, is based around microtransactions, what MTX stands for. They would be shared essentially between the games. So if you bought something for PoE 1, it will eventually be in PoE 2 for you to enjoy. That's huge. That is a plus that cannot be understated. That is a massive, massive thing. And in addition to that, people who just hopped on the Path of Exile 2 train, or the Path of Exile train as a franchise in general, could then go and purchase microtransactions on the website, and then it will eventually be able to enjoy them in PoE 2. So when the game launched, the MTX was a cornerstone of the available content, right? You could purchase stuff on the website for PoE 1 in the understanding that it will be in the game, if not now, but eventually. And there obviously was some MTX that started to be available almost right away. So this is another aspect that I want to keep in mind when we talk about the failure of this game and the ways in which it really struggled to provide for the player base, not only in the immediate launch, but in the months that followed. We can give certain leeway and give certain concessions for aspects like bugs and lag and crashing, especially considering early access. That only goes so far. And I think that one of the aspects that we need to maintain an important, note of when keep in mind is the microtransactions, the consistent and, pervasive nature of that monetization model being present and being the focus, and that being okay, right? That being a natural part of what this game is and what it was designed to be. It's here to make money, and the way that it does that is through microtransactions, cosmetic tabs, to store your items, all that jazz, right? And as the game was updated, there would be more currency tabs. There would be the the offline trading tab as well, and these would be available for purchase. And so a lot of that aspect became, I think, very understandable for both the players and the developers on their side of things, because obviously they all need to get paid, and everyone is looking at that monetization model as a kind of just a natural part of the experience. So I say all this to kind of preface the idea that when I critique and criticize the progress that was made throughout the game's update history, the understanding of the MTX is not a negative. In fact, I regard it almost as a positive, because frankly it's the reason that we are all here. If the MTX didn't exist, the monetization model wasn't present, we wouldn't have the game that we have, right? Path of Exile wouldn't be available for us as this great and wonderful experience to share with our friends and to be able to play with people around the world. It's just not going to be possible unless we have this monetization model in place from the original Path of Exile, and then now into Path of Exile 2. The purchases transfer between games, massive, huge. They didn't have to do that. That's amazing, right? And I can't think of another game that's ever done that before or will ever do that again. They've done a fantastic job, and I can only sing the praises of the microtransaction model that they have implemented and continued to maintain. It's a phenomenal thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of the main aspects that launched with 1.0, the classes, right? So this is your player experience. What can you actually do in the game? You launch a game. what can you actually interact with? It's the content, the characters, the NPCs, the items. A huge part of Path of Exile 2 is the items in the game. So your currency, your tabs, your stash, your everything that you can mess with, right? You know, your ability to craft, all of that stuff. When it was launched, was relatively speaking fairly limited. So we had 6 classes and 2 ascendancy for each class, right? And then the game itself, the story, had 3 acts and a cruel difficulty. You know, we all know the Path of Exile experience with the 1500 passive point tree. Then you've got your skills, your abilities, the spells you cast, the attacks that you make. You know, all of that being there to enjoy in a very limited capacity, relatively speaking, compared to Path of Exile. One, especially after its years of development and what this game, you know, is set up to offer with, you know, 12 classes and, you know, 3 ascendancies per class, a bunch of other, you know, stuff and aspects to it, and all as well as all the weapons and armor kind of associated with those classes. So this is what we launched with, right? We launched with this. This is great. For $30, you get a lot, and that is fantastic. Now I want to move into the very key point that I want to hammer home at every single opportunity that I can. This is an unfinished game. In its current state, it is literally half baked. You have made a doughy half baked pie and you are charging $30 for it with the opportunity to spend upwards of $500 USD for microtransactions unique to PoE2 and a bunch of other cool stuff that's, you know, MTX model. That's all fine, but it's not done, right? We have seen in the industry the way in which things have gone when you provide a product that is unfinished, and the way in which that is very negative. And so the beginning of this conversation was always around Path of Exile 2 being in early access, being unfinished, being a work in progress, and then the element of the last year and a half or so of when will it be finished. And in lieu of the announcement that 1.0 is coming in December, this is why I wanted to talk about this, because this journey has been very rocky. There have been a lot of problems, and the significant issues have been addressed and talked about ad nauseum. Today, I want to go through and process every single point on the graph that has led us to where we are today and talk about whether or not those points progressed, you know, moved the needle towards a finished game or were a complete waste of time, right? Like, a lot of the conversation has essentially been, at least initially, discussing balance changes and league updates and all these things that are like, why are we doing this? What is the point of doing any of these balancing changes if it doesn't move the needle towards a finished game? Did we get a new playable character? Did we get a new weapon to play with, or a weapon category to play with, right? Did we get X, Y, and Z that will be there forever for the finished game, or is it just a tweak that's going to be tweaked back or not relevant or completely changed at the end of this, you know, early access period, and when 1.0 launches, suddenly all of these aspects that we have worked so hard for are now meaningless and not going to be carried forward, right? And so that is what I want to talk about. That is the major point of critique that I have. And so, first hotfix. And I'm going to go through and discuss a variety of points while we describe every single point on the graph, which will be every patch, every hotfix, everything that was ever done to this game from the launch till today. And the reason we're going to go through that is because every single aspect matters. It all contributes to the final product, or, as we see up here, it was a complete waste of time. So, hotfix 1. What did we get? We got at, let's see, December 7th gave us 2 points on the graph. Fixed a bug and fixed client crashes. Now, I remember when this game launched, it was hellacious for crashing. It was a monster crashing game. They did not fix that for launch. They fixed it after launch, which is, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. That's just how it goes, I guess. So we have bug fixes 1, fixed client crashes, and some NPCs. This, in my opinion, on this day, was a net neutral, right? The client crashes give you a couple points. The bug meant you're at a neutral standing. We'll be charitable and we'll say this one was good. Not too bad. Not great, not terrible. Okay, let's go into the next one here. And we are going to be doing this for a while. Next one. Actually, you know what? Let's keep a running list of tabs as we go through this. Hotfix 2. Okay. Fix multiple client crashes. S tier. This is what we love to see. This is fantastic. So hotfix 2 and bam. Fantastic. That's huge. We need more of that. If we could have all of these be that way, this would be the only thing I'd have to say in this video, and the video would be over. But we all know that that isn't going to be the case. So let's move on. Fixed a bug. We were trying to progress Act 2 by talking to the hooded one. Your hideout instead of the clear fail could prevent you from progressing Act 2. Pretty heinous. Understandable. Fixed a bug where the gambler's stock was not correct. Okay. This is a neutral one, in my opinion. So far, changes are pretty mundane. Obviously, when we get to these guys, it's going to be more of the conversational point with that kind of philosophy of changing things. So, fixed an instance crash, shield wall, skeleton arsonists. Excellent. Again, fixed multiple instance crashes, client crashes, pack purchasing problem that could occur in Steam. These are great. The Steam one is a little bit interesting, but obviously, again, we have the MTX aspect, so I'm not sure if I should put that in MTX, but let's just say this goes here, as it was, in no uncertain terms, a bug situation. So, and this is all, by the way, one day, right? We are fixing all of these things in a single day. We have not changed the needle once. We are all still, relatively speaking, at launch. So the launch of the game comes out. We're getting some changes here, finally. Okay. This is the big one. Balance changes. This is where the biggest aspect of my criticism comes in. Your game isn't done. Why are you messing with the icing? The pie isn't finished. Why are you doing balance changes? Why are we balancing an unfinished game? Finish the game. This is what I'm talking about right here. This is the problem that I have, and I think a lot of people have with this situation, with these conversations. What are we doing? What are we doing balancing the game? It's not done yet. Finish the game. Does this do anything to finish the game? Does this make the game more finished? The answer is no. Because these changes will absolutely alter. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be 2005, 2007, you launched a game, that was it. There were no updates. There were no patches. Game was out. That was done, right? If it worked, it worked. If it didn't, it didn't, and it wasn't getting changed. Nowadays, we are tweaking every little tiny thing. Reduce the damage of Supercharged Slam by 60% at maximum stages. How does this make any sense? You don't have a finished product. Why are you messing with what was intended with a skill that is subject to endless change at any point between now and the end of time? And instead of working on finishing the game, you're working on balancing it at its unfinished state. But this right here is a critical failure. There's nothing more infuriating for me than seeing changes like this, because it fundamentally takes away from time and resources that could be going into finishing the game and puts them into doing things that will inevitably be irrelevant. Inevitably be irrelevant. And you could say, let's make the argument, okay? Let's go back to this. You can make the argument that the player experience is bad. The players need a certain quality of life. That it is upon GGG to make sure that the game is playable in a enjoyable way. Immediately, that is up to subjectivity. Immediately, that is up to the beauty in the eye of the beholder. It's different for everybody. It's not your job to make sure that everyone has a fantastic time. It's your job to finish the game. And when the game isn't finished, everything you do should be done towards finishing the game. This isn't that. Let's move on. Alrighty, and with that, we have come to the end of the video. I want to thank you guys for sticking around, watching. Appreciate it. Means a lot. And yeah, what do they always say? Like the video or dislike it. If you agree or disagree, let me know why in the comments. There's a lot of aspects here that are just getting started, and we will be touching on, everything. From the beginning to the end. This video is going to take quite a while to finish, and will be definitely broken up into many parts. So make sure to check out the other ones if you haven't already. And yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yeah, much obliged. Let's see, what else? I theoretically have a Twitter. I will theoretically be streaming at some point. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right, Aramorian, signing off.